Welcome, everybody, to the June Lunch with NEMA. I'm Heather with the New England Museum Association. I just want to say hi, and if you guys can hear me, can you type in where you're calling, who you are, and where you're calling from in the chat feature? That would be great. Lots of typing going on there. This is also, if you're new to Lunch with NEMA, this is actually how you're going to interact with us and the presenter. So if you have any questions at all, go ahead and type it in there, and I will be able to ask John the question, and he hopefully will be able to answer you. Oh, we're all over today in New England. Lots of new names today. That's awesome. Thanks for joining us. Okay, well, I'm going to start the presentation. So today we're going to be talking about Selling Smart, a crash course in education marketing with John Boudreau. John, how do you say your last name? I'm so sorry if I got earlier.
That's no worries. It's my last name is pronounced Boudreau, as I'm sure Amy Boudreau from the Children's Museum of Southeastern Connecticut will also tell you.
Thank you. He is the Education Program Marketing Coordinator at Mystic Seaport. He's also worked with the new Netherland Museum and Replica Ship Half Moon, and also at the Clark Art Institute. He's currently working on the marketing efforts for the museum's education department at Mystic Seaport, and he will be able to give you more information about himself and his little bit of background on what he does in his job. So John, I'm going to let you take it away.
Okay, let's do it. Hi, folks. Welcome. I hope you can all hear me okay. This is Selling Smart, a crash course in education marketing. I am John Boudreau, speaking to you right now. If you're looking for the condo sales pitch webinar, you are in the wrong place, unfortunately. And I can't really help you find the right place, but in terms of education marketing, here we are. I want to just start, as people are coming in here, by answering two big questions, which is, who is this John Boudreau guy anyway, and what does he do? As Heather was talking about earlier, I am currently working at Mystic Seaport in Mystic, Connecticut, where I oversee marketing efforts for the education department. It is kind of a specialized job that I have because we were lucky enough to receive a grant from the Family Foundation that allowed me to do what I do. So I kind of think of myself as embedded marketer. I'm very, very focused on education marketing. I don't do a lot of general visitorship, that kind of thing. In the past, though, I have worked for museums large and small. I've worked in some capacities, some marketing capacities where I've been the only person in the marketing team that's, tasked with increasing visitorship or engagement on basically no budget. I've worked in other museums where I have been part of a really robust in-house marketing team. My work at Mystic is a little bit of both. There are times when I get to work with our own great in-house marketing team, and there are some other times where I am kind of blazing new trails because education marketing does require a slightly different toolkit than a lot of normal marketing. So it's at those times when I am a little more like I'm working in a sort of smaller marketing shop. It looks like a couple people are having. Yep, it looks like a couple people are having difficulty with the audio.
Would you be able to put your speaker just a little bit closer to your mouth?
Let's see. Is that working for people a little better?
That does sound better, because when we were talking earlier, I wasn't hearing it.
Okay.
Yes,
there we go.
Better.
Look at that. Look at them all rolling in.
Thanks.
So why don't I do a little recap then? Sorry, guys. Wow, you missed my great joke about the timeshares earlier, unfortunately. So let me just answer two big questions right off the bat. My work at Mystic Seaport, I work as sort of, I like to think of me as an embedded marketer. So I work specifically for the education department, which means that a lot of my marketing focuses specifically on schools, teachers, and parents. I don't do much with overall visitorship, and I'm lucky to be in such a sort of focused position because we received a grant here at the Seaport a couple years ago that allowed my position to be created. And what this means is my position at the Seaport kind of draws on two different sets of experiences. I, in the past, have worked at museums where I've been part of a really robust in-house marketing team, and I've worked at other museums where I have been sort of the only marketer who is, kind of tasked with increasing visitorship on, almost zero budget. So my work at Mystic kind of draws on both of those mindsets. There are times when I get to work with our really great in-house marketing team that works for the museum as a whole. And there are other times that I'm kind of blazing new trails because education marketing requires a slightly different toolkit than some other marketing. And it's when I'm blazing those new trails that I feel most like I am sort of a one-stop marketing communication shop, which some of you may feel like as well in your own efforts. So hopefully I'll be able to draw on both of those perspectives today as we move through our webinar. So in terms of goals and structures, what I would like to accomplish in the next 45-ish minutes is two things. I want to get thinking about education marketing in a consistent, strategic, modern way, because we are actually, believe it or not, right now, living in the middle of a marketing revolution. And that means things that used to work really well in your own marketing efforts might not work anymore, or there might be some new ways of thinking about audiences and reaching your customers that we can hopefully talk about and explore a little bit today. So I hope that I can kind of expose you to some new ways of thinking about those things in the next 45 minutes. The other point that I'd really like to get across is thinking about education marketing as a long-term commitment and not as an emergency tool or as a stopgap. I think that sometimes education marketing can fall through the cracks. Educators are really focused on developing and implementing great programs, in trying to think about new ways to present collections and that kind of thing. And so marketing is sort of the last thing they do, or something that they do kind of, it's low on the priority list. And marketers, in contrast, are really focused on driving general visitorship to the museum, talking about promoting programs and that kind of thing, and don't have the time to devote to specifically reaching out to teachers. So because of that kind of falling through the cracks, education marketing can sometimes be a stop and go thing. And what I'd like to hopefully get across today is that you really need to give it time and space to grow. Because if you're not kind of tending your education marketing consistently and over the long term, you're not going to see really great results. It's definitely something that you need to let grow. So I hope I can demonstrate why you need to make your marketing a very consistent part of your normal routine today as well. So we're going to focus on some big picture concepts today rather than really, really nitty-gritty tips about implementation, although we're definitely going to have some concrete examples and tips along the way. I've picked this focus because I really think that implementation is going to vary so much based on the size of your institution, what kind of museum you are, what kind of budget you have. So I don't want to give a false impression that you have to spend, I don't know, $2,000 on a mailing list, and that's the only way that it's going to work, because that's not true. There's solutions for everybody, and hopefully these big picture concepts will allow you to kind of follow them to your own solutions. So I've divided it up into about five sort of big concepts, which I have dubbed the 5 commandments. So you can imagine me like Charlton Heston, cradling stone tablets. And that's what we're going to focus on today. We'll go through each of the commandments step by step. And then at the end, I hope we'll have some good time for questions and also some hopefully troubleshooting and group brainstorming. This will be the time where we kind of open it up to you guys to share some stories about what maybe has been working really well for you or something that you'd like to kind of tweak. And that's when we can really get into the nitty-gritty and really hopefully look at some interesting examples. So, all right. I think we will move right along. If you guys want to tap out a little drum roll on your desks, the first commandment is about to present itself, and that is data is king. So because of the stop and go nature of marketing that I was kind of talking about earlier, we can sometimes be bad about quantifying our efforts and results and, thinking long term about what we've done. And this is really unfortunate because you want to capture as much data as you can with your marketing efforts because you want to A, establish a baseline so you can measure success, and B, you want to use the data that you collect to inform and tweak your future marketing. I know this seems really simple, but I think it still bears repeating because if you're not getting data, it's kind of like your marketing is the equivalent of shouting off a cliff. You're not going to find it is going to be very effective, and you're going to get tired pretty quickly. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you get an echo back, and that echo is your data. In the past, marketing data used to be really tricky to collect. If you placed a newspaper ad or maybe you did something on radio, you had an idea of the circulation of the paper or of the listenership of the radio station, but you didn't know for sure how many eyes or how many ears were actually hearing or seeing your ad. And that's kind of frustrating. The good news is that that's absolutely not the case anymore. There are a lot of digital tools out there, like Constant Contact, MailChimp, Facebook ads, Google AdWords, all have these gorgeous analytics apparatuses built right in. So now, using any of these tools, not only can you find out how many people are actually seeing your ad, not, an approximation, but how many people are actually seeing it. You can see how many people are clicking through to your ad, interacting with your links. With Google AdWords, you can see what search terms they entered in order to trigger your ad. With Facebook ads, you can see who's looking at your ad by demographic. Is it doing really well with 18 to 24-year-old people from Missouri? So there's really no excuse to not be collecting this marketing data anymore. It's so easy, and there's more of it available than ever before. And now that said, these digital tools are really great, but I have also had really good success with low-tech, old-fashioned paper and pencil surveys. Although what's good about these is they are, incredibly cheap and can be really effective if you keep a couple things in mind. So as we're thinking about implementing paper surveys, and I'm sure those of you who deal with sort of recording audience interactions and that kind of thing are already way ahead of me on this, you really want to keep your surveys short when you implement them. People won't mind taking them as long as it doesn't take them very long. So you want to keep it short, and if you can, try and administer them on site. Because if you ask somebody to mail a survey back to you, or if you ask somebody to email a survey back to you, oftentimes even that small barrier is a little too much to ask, and you won't get the surveys back. But if you can watch the person fill out the survey and you can receive it from them right there, you're going to have much better results. Part of the importance of keeping a survey short is really thinking about using every question you ask. One survey question that I see all the time that I think is kind of a weak question or a difficult one to use is something like, did you enjoy our program? Check yes or no. And the reason why I don't really love questions like this is if that is your goal, hopefully you should be able to figure out if the person enjoyed the program from the other answers on the survey, right? If you need somebody to tell you if they enjoyed the program, you might want to tweak that survey. Also, because of the fact that this person is filling out a survey right in front of you, it's very unlikely that they're going to check, no, I didn't enjoy the program, because you're looking at them as they fill out this survey. So you really want to make sure that the questions that you use, you can tie back to quantifiable things that will help you tweak your marketing in the future. As an example, we run an overnight sailing camp here at Mystic Seaport, which has been going on for 65 plus years. And I decided to implement a survey last summer to capture some marketing data about where folks were coming from. And we implemented it over 2 months, paper and pencil, and captured almost 100% of our customers, which was really, really remarkable. I had a great team behind me that helped kind of get those implementation numbers so high. We administered the survey on site when parents came to drop their campers off. And here are the questions we asked. Name, town, state. Are you a museum member? Has your child been to this camp before? How did you hear about this camp? So that's 5 questions right there, 3 of which, the last 3, were multiple choice. And the first 2, which were hopefully so easy to fill out that you didn't have to take too long to think about your name and your town and state. So really easy, really fast, under 3 minutes to do. And so that allowed us to capture some really interesting data and find out some surprising things. One of the biggest questions with the town state is I wanted to see where our campers were coming from. Now, even though the camp has been running for, like I said, over 65 years, it draws regularly campers from around the country and even around the world. We always kind of figured that our #1 feeder state was going to be Connecticut. But the numbers really bared out how true that was. More than half of our campers came from Connecticut, which is really, really interesting because if you look at our neighboring state of Rhode Island, right here, for those of you that aren't familiar with Mystic's location in Connecticut, we're only about 15 minutes from the Rhode Island borders. We have almost no campers from Rhode Island. States that are a much further drive, Pennsylvania, for example, or New Jersey, were really turning out, feeding us more campers than even our closest neighbors. And I don't think that that was something that we really understood to quite that extent. So that was really useful, and that allowed me to tweak my geographic markets for this summer. I focused much more on sort of Westchester and the downstate area of New York than I did in the past. But I think the most important and most interesting data that we gathered from that graph, the most interesting data that we gathered from that survey was this graph, which was the answer to our question, how did you hear about Conrad Camp, which is the name of the overnight sailing camp. And what we found out here is, I think, the biggest universal truth of marketing in general, but for education and summer programs specifically. What you can see is that there's no silver bullet here. There's no one good way to reach your entire audience. Yes, it's true that about 37% of people said that they heard about us through our website. Another 23%, almost a quarter, said that they heard about us through referral or word of mouth. But if you look at that other section, that's a pretty large percentage, 28% of people who heard about us through a variety of different ways. And so when you're thinking about that, for your own programs, for your own field trips, if you just send out a few emails about an upcoming program 2 weeks before it starts, or you do, say, 1 Facebook page a month out from your field trip season, you can see right here the percentage of your audience that you're not reaching by just using one medium. And I should say even further that if you do, put your information about your field trip or your camp or your program on your website, 37% of people will eventually see it, sure, but if it's only up on the front page for a week or 2, or it's buried in a hard-to-access portion of your website, you can bet that you're only going to get a portion of that 37%. So that right there, I think, makes a really strong argument for your marketing as a long-term commitment and as a multimedia commitment. Because if you're just doing one thing, you're leaving a large slice of the pie out of the equation. So I think that's really important. We're going to move on to the second commandment now, so just give you a pause to.
John,
Yep.
yep, can I interrupt you for a second? We did
Sure,
have a
please
question
do.
come in. Do you have a preference to administer surveys in person or using a freestanding iPad on site?
That's a great question. I generally administer surveys when I have somebody on site, just because I find that the nitty-gritty of like, okay, you need to fill this out, and it's always great to have somebody there who's knowledgeable about the surveys to answer questions. That said, I think if you want to leave a stationary iPad, that can absolutely work too. I used Google Forms recently for a really large-scale survey that I implemented, and that worked gorgeously on the iPad. It took a lot of number crunching and data sort of fiddling out of my hands and just took care of it. So I think iPads can be a really great way too if you have the resources to do that. Looks like we have somebody who has lost audio. Is that something that other people are running into as well?
No.
Okay. Looks like maybe
Yep.
Gail might want to call in. Okay.
Yep.
All right, so we will move on to commandment number 2 here. And commandment number 2 is really one of my favorites because I kind of geek out about writing a lot. And it's that size matters when you're writing, which is to say that shorter is almost always better. When you think about the tools in your toolkit, in your marketing toolkit, to reach educators, email is a really, really great one because teachers are tough to reach by phone, and although they're on Facebook and they're looking at your website and that kind of thing, they're generally not doing that when they're at work. So when you want to reach a teacher in the office, email is the best way to do that. The downside, though, is that according to marketing and sales guru Jill Conrath, most people only take about 2.7 seconds when deciding if they're going to read, forward, or delete an email. That's not a long time. And teachers who are reading their email in 10-minute spurts between classes or maybe in their one free planning period, I'm going to guess that they make that decision in even less time. So what does this mean? This means that you really have to do a couple things right off the bat in your emails or in any of your marketing communication. You want to be clear, you want to be engaging. You want to provide a call to action, which is some sort of next step that you want this person to take. And then get out. That's it. The shorter and more engaging and clearer you are, the better. I think the good news about this is that museum educators are awesome at communicating like this. Simple, clear, focused communication is the only way you can talk to a bunch of third graders. I know. I see our museum educators do it every day. So when you're writing for an external audience in a marketing style, you want to keep that in mind. Always kind of think about writing for a third grade attention span. And I think you'll find that that can kind of help you narrow in on the type of writing and the length of writing that's really going to work well. Of course, this concise communication is also really helpful on social media because when you are being bombarded with a variety of things in your newsfeed, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, you don't have very much time to get somebody to stop that scroll and read your thing. So be it email, be it social media, you really want to focus on this tight, concise, clear writing. But mostly today we're going to focus on email because it is such an effective way to reach teachers. So it's time to kind of perform an audit of your marketing materials. Again, Conrath says that a lot of the most effective sales and marketing emails are 100 words or less. So you want to look, how long are the things that you're sending out to teachers? If they're not in that neighborhood of about 100 words, more is okay. You really want to make sure that if you're going longer, a reader has an idea of what you want them to do in the first paragraph. And it's very clear about that so that they can read the first 2 or 3 sentences of your email in those 2.7 seconds. and figure out what they need to do. So I actually went through this process myself here at Mystic. We have an overnight camp for teachers. Well, I'm sorry, not for teachers. We have an overnight camp that we cater mostly to independent schools. And I've done a lot of very direct targeted outreach to local independent schools to see if folks are interested. And what I started with was a 400-word email that I used to send out. It seems so cute and so misguided now. And this is the first 122 words. So what I'm going to do is I'll give you guys a go, but I'll give you about 3 seconds to try and scan this email and figure out what I am asking Mr. Corley to do. All right, are you ready? Go. Okay, your time's up. Really, really tough to figure out what I want Mr. Corley to do in those 122 words. I don't mean to pat myself on the back, but I think there are parts of it that are beautifully written. Our goal is to make our museum feel like an extension of your classroom. That's great. But 122 words later, you really don't have any idea what I would like Mr. Corley to do. And even worse than that, there's still about 300 words in between you and the end of that email. So that's something that immediately, even though I put a lot of time and care and made it really official, that's something that's going to get trashed or deleted or ignored because it's not clear, it's not concise, and it doesn't provide a quick call to action right off the bat. So I pared down the email over several iterations, and this is what I sent out now. This is the entire email. It's around 110 words, I think, which is something that I'm comfortable with and is a really nice length. It looks okay on the screen. And this is really so much better because it does immediately, by the time you get to the end of the email, it's clear that I would like to meet and talk a little bit more about the program. And it sets the hook right away. What I like about it is it starts with this line, I hope you received a brochure last month in the mail, which automatically gets the reader thinking about, did I get that? I don't remember that brochure. Or, yeah, I remember that brochure. Where did I put it? So you've already won there. You've already got your reader thinking about the mindset. Again, it is that kind of third grade attention span. You'll see in the email that I do mention this brochure that I send along. I will generally email it, I'll generally snail mail it to them first, and then I always make sure I attach a PDF copy in the email because snail mail is unreliable sometimes too in terms of getting materials into teachers' hands. So this is a little bit of what the brochure looks like. It is, if you take the time and count up the words, you'll see that there are generally about 200 words on a page, and even that is probably a little too long. But the good news with the brochure is that because of these big pictures and because of the pop-out testimonials, you can really effectively skim this piece of marketing collateral. So maybe you just go through and you read the statements from our teachers, or maybe you just go through and look at the pictures. Again, that's a very third grade thing to do. Or maybe you go through and read. Now we had our great in-house graphic designer who kind of made this up for us. And if you're thinking about producing a piece of collateral like this for your own institution, I would really recommend that you do try and find a professional graphic designer to do it. Maybe you have one in-house. There are plenty of freelance designers out there who would love the work. And if you do it right, if you really take care to make sure that the text that you're putting in there and the photos that you're putting in there will age well, it's kind of a one-time expense. This is something that you can do once and then use for 5 or 10 years, depending. You'll probably want to update it, of course, but if you do it right, you won't need to update it again next year and incur another expense. And the reason why I really want to stress having a graphic designer do it is, although you may have some skills in Photoshop and in InDesign, you really want a professional doing it because it's the difference between showing up to an interview in a tuxedo or showing up to an interview in a bathing suit. They're both going to make an impression, but one is going to make a much more positive impression than the other one. Unless maybe your job interview is for a lifeguard, in which case, a bathing suit might be appropriate. So that's really what you want to think about once you've zeroed in on the audience that you want to reach. We're going to move on to the next commandment here in a minute, but I want you, just before we leave writing land, to take a look at these testimonials. And we're going to talk about this a little later, the reason why these are important, which I hope will persuade you to kind of talk to some of your people, talk to your teachers that love you and keep coming back year after year, and ask them to write a short little something that you can use. Because commandment 3 is relationships are important. And this gets a little bit more at this kind of modern aspect of marketing, because marketing increasingly is no longer just about advertising. It's no longer a megaphone. It's more like a walkie-talkie. There is a certain amount of conversation, a certain amount of interaction that people are expecting from marketing. And this is good because a lot of educational and cultural institutions like museums are set up well to take advantage of this. There is a certain amount of conversation that is always going to go back and forth between a teacher as you're setting up a field trip or as you're coordinating an outreach or something like that. And so I want you to think about those interactions too as marketing, because increasingly generosity in sort of a largely defined way is becoming one of your most powerful marketing tools. I don't necessarily mean generosity by just sort of giving away free stuff or doing giveaways, although that is certainly a good technique, but generosity in the sense of offering great customer service at every turn, and really going out of your way to make the teachers and customers that you work with feel like VIPs. This is something that's kind of known, well, I'm sorry, I should make one more point. By treating these people well, they are going to become sort of deputized and do some of your advertising for you in a best case scenario. And this is known as relationship marketing, which is kind of a spin on the old concept of word of mouth, but I think it goes a little further and is a little more systemic. You want to put your name on the tips of people's tongues when you do something extraordinary, because when you do extraordinary things, your customers talk about it, and that's really powerful. If you take a moment and think back to the last 3 new goods or services you purchased, maybe a washing machine or a new restaurant or a financial planner, my question to you is not, did you ask other people for their opinion before you made these purchases? My question instead is, who did you ask for their opinion beforehand? Because I'm sure if you're buying a new washing machine, maybe you read consumer reports, or you looked at reviews on Amazon, or you asked your neighbors. With the new restaurant, I can bet you that somebody came into the office and said, "Oh man, we went to this great new restaurant downtown. You got to try it this weekend." With the financial planner, maybe you asked your parents who they use, or you asked your siblings who they trust. So you're always going back to asking real people for their opinions. Summer camps and field trips are really no different. You can bet, particularly with summer camps, moms and dads and all sorts of parents and guardians are asking around. They're saying, I'd like a new summer camp this year. What works for you guys? What do you do? What do your kids enjoy? And if the first thing they say is, "Oh man, my kids love summer camp at Mystic Seaport," or insert your institution's name there, that is instantly powerful, because people tend to believe their peers much more than they believe marketers. And I have a little illustration of this in the corporate world as well. I don't know if any of you use the website backcountry.com. They are an online retailer of outdoor goods. I use them every now and then. I've bought things from them in the past, and this winter I bought a new ski jacket from them. And less than 24 hours after I clicked the Buy Now button, I had received both an email and, surprisingly, a phone call from a guy named Ian Saukerson who works at Backcountry. And now I have never had anyone from Backcountry call me or email me about my order. So I immediately thought that, it was out of stock or there was some weird shipping thing going on. But after I read Ian's email and listened to his voicemail message, I learned that he was there as my customer account specialist, is what they call them at Backcountry. But what that means is that he is forevermore my personal first point of contact with that company. So if I have questions about an order, or if I want information on what type of backpack to buy, or anything like that. If I say, "Oh, Ian, I'm planning a trip to the Mojave Desert. What do I need?" He's going to be my guy. And although at first I felt a little kind of privacy invaded by getting this unsolicited phone call, I soon realized that what I actually felt was kind of special. That Ian was looking out for me, and Backcountry was looking out for me. And of course, the first thing I did is I went out and told 3 or 4 friends that I thought might use Backcountry. I said, "Have you guys ever had this happen to you?" And when they said they hadn't, I felt even more special. And then I realized that I had just done Backcountry's work for them in a way that was much cheaper and much more effective than anything else they did. Because by sharing my story, by sharing my great experience, I have made a connection in my friends' minds between Backcountry and phenomenal customer service. And furthermore, I have just done the same thing to the 79 of you who are listening today. Backcountry should probably be paying me some sort of salary at this point, but they're not. And that is the example of how powerful this relationship marketing can be. All it took was a phone call and an email from this faceless corporate entity, and now I am a walking, talking billboard for Backcountry. And you can do the same things by offering really consistent, great experiences to your teachers. When we think about that a little more concretely, what does treating your teachers like VIPs look like? Like I said, it has a lot to do with excellent customer service, being really responsive, and that kind of thing. And a lot of this is not going to feel like normal marketing stuff, but I hope I've demonstrated that it can be so incredibly important and valuable. So you want to try and find ways to offer your teachers or offer your parents, offer your customers exclusive, special experiences that are nonetheless brand focused. And by brand focused, I mean tied into your museum and its mission. So here at the Seaport, for example, we do monthly professional development sessions. They're free to attend, and we do a lecture on a topic related to maritime history every month, and also related to our programs. Sometimes we'll do an activity that students can do, or another really popular session that we do is we'll do tours of our collections facility for our teachers, and those are always really, really popular. If you can get your curator to agree to it, this can be a really good model for your institution as well, because what it allows is it's very education focused. You are able to show teachers the vast array of resources that you have, but it's also something that a normal visitor to the museum doesn't get to do. So it ties on that special, exclusive thing. And so that can be really, really effective. We also at the Seaport do an event that I like to think of as the summer soiree, which at the end of summer vacation, so early August typically, we will do a cocktail party with some hors d'oeuvres for teachers. We generally will take them out on the Mystic River on a boat ride, which is something that we also offer as part of our educational programming. So again, tying into that brand focused. And then we'll talk to them a little bit about kind of what's new at the museum for the upcoming school year, answer some questions, and then we give them some time and space to just kind of hang out and experience the museum after hours. We are blessed with a really tranquil, beautiful location, and so we just kind of let the teachers roam about our courtyard and enjoy themselves. Because part of it, part of the event is a little commercial for us, but it's also a thank you and a way to kind of maintain these great relationships with teachers that we've established. That's something that you guys can do too. And teachers really love this event. I have teachers come up to me all the time when I'm, tabling at teacher events or something like that, and they come up to me and they go, "Ooh, when are you doing the cocktail party this year? I can't wait to come to it." So it's something that keeps your brand, keeps your museum at the top of people's minds. Whenever they see you, they make that connection. And I want to just, before I get to my last point, I want to circle back around actually to something I was talking about in the previous slide about the importance of peer recommendations. Remember when I asked you to think of who you talked to before you made your last 3 major purchases. That's part of the reason why we have those testimonials in our brochure. They have, real names, real people, real schools, because those act, to a certain extent, just like you asking your coworker for a hot new restaurant in town. Once you can put a name and a face and a school to somebody who's had a great experience at your institution, you are going to be more likely to trust that. And so even though you might not know the teacher, maybe you'll know the school because that teacher is from a school in New York City, and hey, you teach at a school in New York City. Or that teacher is a 4th grade teacher, and hey, you're a 4th grade teacher. So again, it's that power of peer recommendation. So sorry, that was just a little bit of a tangent there, but bringing it back to generosity and relationship marketing, we'll just wrap up with the brief story of John Boudreau, Homeschool Concierge. One segment of educators and customers that respond really well to this kind of VIP treatment are homeschool parents. Because homeschool parents, for those of you that do homeschool programs or work with them, are natural sharers. Once they find something that works really well for them, they immediately share it with their homeschool network. And so in my time in Mystic, I was lucky very early on to be invited to join a local Facebook group of homeschoolers. And even though I'm probably the only single, unmarried, childless person under 30 in that homeschool group, it's really great for me because I get unfettered, unfiltered access to what these homeschool parents are thinking about and what they're looking for in the community. It allows me to advertise really well. But they have a face that they can put to the institution, which means that there's a personal connection there again. And so I answer questions a lot of times about our homeschool programming, what's coming up, but I also answer just general interest questions. If somebody has a question about Mystic Seaport in that group, they go to me. And basically, I just make sure I answer every question, answer it in a friendly manner, and if somebody is saying something good about us on that group, I make sure to thank them. So it's just a little bit of, politeness, being accessible, being friendly. And because of that, we have run a wait list for every homeschool class we've offered since I joined that Facebook group. And I think that's really a testament to the power of this kind of relationship marketing. Okay. You only have...
John, I do have a couple questions, though, for you.
Sure.
Do you ever go to trade shows for camps or similar type events?
Yeah, that is actually a whole thing that if I could answer that question at the end, I would be happy to talk about my philosophy on camp and trade shows. So if we could just hold off on that question, it's a really great one and one that I know a lot of people are curious about.
Okay. And then also, what's your attendance like for the teacher professional developments and the soiree?
That's a great question. We will vary month to month on the teacher professional development session. We normally will get about 12 to 15, which is actually a size that I really like because it still feels very personal. And I don't worry too much about numbers as much as I worry about the quality of the program and the quality of the interactions, because it's great to have multiple mouthpieces, but if you have a few really high quality, really zealous mouthpieces, that can be just as good. So that's about the size of a professional development session. 10 to 15, I'd say. We have some that go larger, some that go smaller. Our summer soiree, our kind of cocktail party there, that can range from about 20 to 30, sometimes as high as 40 or 50.
Okay, and then
So,
Emily, I'll ask your questions at the end.
Great. Okay, yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. Okay, so commandment number 4 is always experiment. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we are currently in the middle of sort of a marketing revolution. The way people are consuming advertising and what they expect from it has changed a lot, and teachers are no different in this respect. Since the rapid rate of change is probably going to continue, it really will benefit you to keep a portion of your marketing experimental, because the more you're aware of future directions, the less likely you're going to be taken by surprise. This gets to this modern strategic thinking about education marketing. Now, this is uncomfortable for a lot of us to do because it goes against a lot of kind of institutional wisdom that says, don't change horses in midstream. If you have something that's working well, throw all your resources behind that. And I'm certainly not advocating stopping things that are working. I think if you're going to break it down, about 80% of your marketing should be things that work, and about 20 or 15% should be new things that you want to try out. And I think the power of this experimentation is really very tangible. So I want to encourage you all to find your watermelon, which is a phrase that I borrowed from Chicago Tribune reporter Scott Kleinberg, who is a social media and tech reporter. And this is in reference to something that the website BuzzFeed did on Facebook back in April. They broadcast 2 of their employees putting rubber bands on a watermelon until it exploded. And for those of you that haven't seen the video, I've got about the last minute and a half queued up here so you can have a look at just what is going on. So we're going to hopefully hope none of you jumped too far out of your seats. It gets me every time. So why did I just have you watch a video of 2 people explode a watermelon with rubber bands? I had you watch that because 800,000 people watched either all 45 minutes of that, yes, 45 minutes, or just a little bit of it. They tuned in on Facebook Live and watched this. I don't think anyone could have predicted that, and that's why experimentation is so important. Because although you may not go viral, you might not have 800,000 people interact with whatever you're experimenting is doing, finding your watermelon is about finding that unique thing that works, that resonates with your audience, that makes sense with your institution. Because that thing is out there, but you're not going to find it unless you keep a portion of your marketing experimental. I think sometimes when it comes to innovation, we can be a little trepidatious because it seems like innovation means that we need to pull an idea out of thin air. It takes a lot of brain power. But I want to remind you that not all of your ideas have to be 100% new. The BuzzFeed staffers certainly weren't the first people to hear about exploding a watermelon with rubber bands. And so that's an idea that they borrowed or found out somewhere and spun into its own thing. And it's no different for us. It's no different for cultural institutions. You want to look at corporate examples, look at your competitors and friends, and see what are they doing? What's cool that they're doing and what interests you? And then think about, could that work for us? And then finally, in terms of keeping the watermelon spirit alive, I had you guys, again, watch a minute and a half of that because I wanted you to remember that innovation should be fun. It doesn't have to outwardly be fun. You don't have to be kind of crazy and off the cuff in your experimentation outwardly. But you should be doing things, you should be experimenting with things that are of interest to you and that you really get a kick out of, because that's going to make the innovation seem more like fun and less like work, even though that experimentation is so, so important. The final commandment, here we are, oh man, is be polite, be persistent. You guys know that old chestnut about the definition of insanity being, doing the same thing 1,000 times and expecting a different result? By that definition, marketing is insane, because almost no one buys a field trip or comes to a program after hearing about it just once. Again, this need to make it a long-term, systemic, consistent commitment with your marketing. Your colleagues in advancement and development will tell you that it generally takes 6 to 8 touches or 6 to 8 separate contacts with a potential donor before they make that donation. And it's the same in sales and marketing. An author named Thomas Smith wrote in his book, The Art of Successful Advertising, the following, and I quote, "The first time people look at an ad, they don't see it. The second time, they don't notice it. The third time, they're aware that it's there. The fourth time, they have a fleeting sense that they've seen it before. And the fifth time, they actually read the ad." Now, what is funny about this is Thomas Smith wrote his book in 1885, and those principles are still just as true today. It takes persistence in order to get your message across. I have worked with some schools, advertised, sales for 9 months before they actually got to the museum to do the program. And that was a school that really wanted to come. So you're in for a really long marketing and sales cycle here. It's unfortunately just the nature of the beast, which means that on top of everything else that you have to keep track of and keep organized, you really want to be very organized and very conscious of where your kind of sales in progress, your marketing efforts are. In order to keep track of leads, I wind up using a lot of Outlook appointments. You'll find something that works for you and your organization. One thing that I want to encourage you to do as you are kind of thinking about this long slog through the definition of insanity, as much as you can, you always want to be the person to initiate follow-up. Because if you ask a teacher or if you ask a parent to reach out to you in 2 weeks, or if you say, all right, well, take some time to think about it and email me when you've made a decision, you've just lost that person. Not out of maliciousness, life gets in the way, life gets busy. But if you are always the one to say, hey, just checking in, or great, I'll email you in 2 weeks and we can talk about this again, you are always much more in control of your sales and your marketing. It's okay to be persistent. Like I said, it takes 5 times before people see an ad. It takes 6 to 8 touches before a donor makes a donation. You have to get over this fear of being too naggy, too persistent. What you don't want to do is you don't want to take on this sort of pushy used car salesman sales pattern. You want to treat your leads as you would a colleague, because they are your colleagues. They're also educators. And you really want to be an advocate for them as much as you can, which is not inconsistent with being persistent. But if at any point you find yourself being able to sub out the words field trip for, a lightly used 2002 Ford Taurus, you might want to rethink your approach. Persistence and politesse, being polite, can go hand in hand. And the waiting on that really long sales cycle is definitely the hardest part, as Tom Petty will point out. But it gets easier with practice, and that's where the earlier commandments can help. Because you can take faith in, or have faith in the fact that you've put in the legwork. If your customer relationships and word of mouth are good, people are out doing your work for you, even while you're waiting. If you've designed your message to be short, to the point, and easy to share, you're greasing the gears so people are already talking about you easily and quickly. And if you set up your metrics properly, you'll be able to measure your success when that happens, no matter how small it may be at first. And that is really selling smart. So to conclude, I just want to check back in on our stated goals, see how we did. Thinking about education marketing as a long-term commitment. I hope with the graphs I've showed you about how people find out about us, I hope with the sales cycle that we just talked about, you can see that if you are making marketing the last thing you do, you are really going to have difficulty reaping rewards and reaping really tangible benefits. It has to be a long-term process. It's like growing a plant. You got to give it space to grow. You have to water it frequently. In terms of approaching education marketing in a consistent, strategic, modern way, I hope we are thinking about new tools we can use to gather data, either digital or old-fashioned, And I hope that we are thinking about marketing as a holistic thing, not just putting an ad in a newspaper, but offering great customer service or offering special experiences to make people really identify and commune with your brand in a meaningful way. And I think that, as long as you keep those things in mind, you're going to be on the right track. So thank you so much for listening to me talk for almost an hour today. This went a little longer than I thought. I would still really like to open it up to questions if you'd like to stick around, if you still have a few bites of sandwich, so we can kind of go from there.
So if anybody has any questions, go ahead and type them in. I'll ask Emily's question now. She asked, what CRM tools do you use to attract visitors to your programs?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Emily, thank you. We use software from Blackbaud to do most of our tracking. What is most useful for me, depending on metrics, is, I'm actually interested in purchased programs. So the way it works at our institution is once somebody purchases one of the programs that I am selling, I either find out about it directly because it's, something that I've worked with these teachers for 9 months, so I know when it happens. Or if you make a purchase that I'm not aware of, it goes into our Razor's Edge system, and then I pull from there and kind of use metrics as needed through there. To be honest, it's not a perfect system. We make our Blackbaud software do a lot of things that it wasn't really designed to do. So unfortunately, I don't have a really great slam dunk answer for you, Emily, but if other people have programs and software that they use that works really well for them, please feel free to chime in. I also actually want to get back to the question that was asked earlier about camps and trade shows. It's always a battle for us to figure out which ones of these shows we want to go to. I exhibit at both education-themed events and conferences and sort of summer-themed events and conferences. Obviously the summer-themed ones for the summer camps and the education-themed ones for our school year programming. I go to radically fewer camp shows now than I think was typical for the department in the past. I find that you want to be realistic, particularly with summer camp shows. I don't do anything that is out of a 30-minute drive from the seaport because I figure if I don't want to drive, a parent isn't going to want to either. And I try not to pay for these camp shows when I can. So I find a lot of times local schools are really good, local churches, religious organizations, community centers can be good. And there are, every now and then, if a parenting magazine or something is doing a show in, again, that 30-minute radius, I'll go to that too. For educators events, I generally go to more that are further away. Obviously, a lot of our educators come to us from the state of Connecticut, so the Connecticut History, Connecticut Council for the Social Studies, I go to their events and that kind of thing, because even though they're statewide, chances are good that teachers in Connecticut will interact with us, hopefully in some way, shape, or form. And some days those can be hit or miss. Some days they're really great and people are very interested in the programs. And other days, I just get kind of people come up to me, take a piece of candy, but I still look at that as really valuable relationship building because, you say hi, you talk a little bit about the museum in a non-pushy way, and they go out with a much better perception of the museum, hopefully, than when they came in, or at the very least, a reminder that we still exist.
And then I have one more question here. Do you partner with other area attractions?
So that is a great question. It's sort of far-reaching, has some far-reaching implications. As many of you may know who have been to Mystic, the Seaport is a maritime history museum, but there's an aquarium right up the road from us, which is also, sometimes confusingly, named Mystic Aquarium. And so the general visitorship, I think, it's not atypical to go to the aquarium in the morning and the seaport in the afternoon, or vice versa. And we've worked out some ticketing things institutionally to encourage that sort of behavior and make that happen. In my small little world of education programs, we will definitely work as a department, to partner with local institutions when it makes sense for us. Mashantucket Pequot Museum, sometimes the aquarium, sometimes Mystic Museum of Art and that kind of thing. But also during our summer camps is a really good time for us to collaborate with our local cultural institutions. So we'll do joint summer camps with the Mystic Aquarium. We'll do joint summer camps with the Denison Pequot Seapost Nature Center, which is right up the road from us. And that's really our biggest area of kind of crossover and co-promotion with other area attractions.
Okay, and then how do you go about updating your mailing list for the paper brochures? I know that's probably an issue with a lot of people.
Yeah, mailing lists are tricky. Again, we use Blackbaud software in order to keep our mailing list of teachers updated. So we have our database administrator who, and I concede that this is probably something that is a little more applicable to medium and large institutions that can afford a database admin, because I don't do a lot of culling and updating myself. I don't really get my hands dirty. But what I do is we have a few events every year. We always gather emails at our professional development sessions. We have one big weekend in April where we open the museum up to educators for free, and we get in a ton of email addresses that way. So I will, once or twice a year, collate them and send them off to our DBA, who will then enter them in. In terms of culling, since the email and you asked specifically about paper, didn't? So we'll get to that in a second. Mm-hmm. With the email addresses, all of our emails that we send out, we always have an unsubscribe option. So we just kind of put it on the recipient to unsubscribe. We don't really do a lot of culling ourselves. Paper is kind of a different animal, though. We try and avoid doing a lot of paper mailings, but we do send out our big education brochure every year. And basically what we do with that is we do maintain a list of teachers, generally, history teachers, English teachers, or elementary teachers within a radius of the museum, basically the local schools. And we send out to them. So that kind of keeps the mailing list manageable because it's not that many names, and it also makes sure that we have a pretty good chance of getting a return on investment for sending them a brochure, because if you're closer to us, you're more likely to interact with us.
And then another question came in. Does the staff ever do workshops at the events where you might be more doing the trade show part of it and then someone's doing a workshop? Because I know that's another way to get your word out, is not necessarily being in the exhibit hall, but more in a session itself. Yes,
definitely not uncommon. My coworker, Crystal Rose, who heads our digital initiatives, is a frequent speaker at a lot of these different conferences. And she is always really great because she'll make sure that she is kind of plugging our programs as needed. And that can be a really great way to sort of tag team. So the answer is, unhelpfully, sometimes, but not always.
And then what are the more common special requests that you get from workshop groups?
From workshop groups, we don't really open it up to a request thing, because we worry, if we open up the requests, it's going to be like, oh man, can I touch the fossilized whale eyeball that we have? Or, oh, can I climb all the way up on the Charles W. Morgan, which, for a variety of liability issues is not feasible. But some of the things that we continue to offer, we, like I said, we do collections behind the scenes. We take teachers out rowing in some of our replica whale boats, which is generally a big hit because it is a very hands-on, tactile thing. So anything that can really allow your teachers to have an experience that their students might if they came to your institution, we find is good. If it's hands-on and active, that's going to be generally pretty popular, or exclusive in some way, shape, or form, like going behind the scenes in the collection area. Does that help, Jennifer?
Okay. It does. Okay. So I think we have run over, so I do want to thank everybody for staying on board that has
thank you guys.
wanted to ask questions and listen to John answer those questions, which was pretty awesome. And John, I want to thank you for spending your lunch hour with us and telling us more about your programs.
Hey, no problem. Was happy to do it. One thing that I will point out before you guys kind of get on your way, if you do need to email me with any questions, my email is right